Okay, so I want you to picture this. It is Glasgow in 1969.
Right in the middle of that intense, post-war Reconstruction era.
Exactly. So the wind is just howling off the River Clyde. It's cutting straight through the heavy canvas overalls of a man who is, like, balanced precariously on this grid of industrial scaffolding.
Up there in the freezing cold.
Right, freezing cold. And he's surrounded by all this brutalist concrete breathing in the sharp, metallic fumes of industrial solvent and lead paint.
Which is incredibly harsh on the lungs, by the way.
Totally. And yet, while he's holding a brush above his head, fighting all that physical exhaustion of manual labor, he is perfectly executing a highly complex 17th century vocal trill.
It's an amazing image.
It really is. He is utilizing microtonal variations and this intense diaphragmatic breath control with the precision of, like, a classical cellist.
Completely unaccompanied, too.
Yes, completely unaccompanied. Just carrying a centuries-old oral tradition in his throat right against the roar of Scottish industry.
And that sensory clash, that harsh reality of heavy industry just colliding with the delicate preservation of oral history is exactly what we're unpacking today.
It really is, because when you look at the historical record, it rarely captures that kind of multidimensional reality. The archives usually just give us, well, flat data.
Right. A name, a date, maybe an occupation, but it misses the humanity.
Exactly. And that is why you are sitting at the table with us today.
Yeah.
So, welcome back to the deep dive. We're taking a stack of source materials and looking way past those flat data points.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. So our mission today centers on an archival webpage and the original liner notes from Topic Records, focusing on this specific, really remarkable album.
The album is called Free and Easy, right?
Yep, Free and Easy, recorded by a traditional singer named Kevin Mitchell. But we aren't just here to read a track list to you.
Now we're going way deeper than that.
We are going to deconstruct the actual mechanics of his voice, the socioeconomic reality of the Glasgow folk scene, and how working-class immigrants literally mapped their lost geographies through song.
The documentation we have from Topic Records provides this incredibly rare window into all of that.
It really does. I mean, we are looking at a record label that didn't just want to capture, like, a catchy tune.
No, they were engaging in this intense act of cultural preservation. They treated the repertoire of an industrial painter with the kind of academic rigor normally reserved for, classical symphonies.
Which is wild. And that brings us right back to the man on the scaffolding. Because to understand the gravity of this album, we really have to understand the trajectory of his life.
His specific background is so key here.
Right. So according to the biographical notes, he was born in the city of Derry in North Ulster. And he spends the first 36 years of his life there.
Just completely steeped in the highly specific vocal traditions of that region.
Yeah, he absorbs it all. And then, in 1969, which is a pivotal year, he packs up and migrates across the water to settle in Glasgow.
And that date, that migration path, it's highly significant. We are talking about a very specific period of the working class diaspora.
Yeah, set the scene for us there. What is Glasgow like in 69?
Well, Glasgow in 1969 was undergoing massive deindustrialization in some sectors, but it was still this gritty, hardworking, urban powerhouse.
Right, a really tough place.
Very tough. It was a city built on the backs of labor, and it had this long-established, very complex relationship with Irish migrants. I mean, he isn't moving to Paris to become a bohemian artist,
No, not at all. He is moving to a really harsh environment to find work, to raise a family, basically just to survive.
Exactly.
And the source is very clear on his reality. It says he is married, he has 2 children, and his day job is an industrial painter.
Which is not light work.
Not at all. And I've been wrestling with how to frame this, because the temptation for a lot of people is to view him as having this, like, secret identity.
Oh, like a superhero trope?
Yeah, Clark Kent by day, master archivist of North Ulster song by night.
Right.
But I think that metaphor actually does a huge disservice to the music. If we separate the labor from the art, we misunderstand the art completely.
I completely agree with that assessment. The secret identity trope implies that one life is a costume.
Exactly.
But in the true folk tradition, the labor and the art are just inextricably linked. We have to look at the physiological reality of what he was actually doing all day.
Break that down for us, because industrial painting sounds exhausting.
It's incredibly taxing on the respiratory system. You are dealing with volatile organic compounds, usually terrible ventilation, and just the sheer muscular tension in the abdomen and back.
From reaching and climbing all day.
Right, doing that labor for 10 to 12 hours a day.
And yet, this style of singing he is celebrated for, this North Ulster tradition, it requires basically the exact opposite physical state.
It really does. It demands profound diaphragmatic relaxation.
Yeah, immense breath capacity to carry these long, unaccompanied, melodic phrases, right?
Exactly, and a completely unconstricted throat to execute that complex ornamentation.
So how does a human body endure the physiological punishment of a Scottish shipyard or a construction site, and then just walk into a folk club and deliver a performance requiring the breath control of an elite athlete?
It points to an extraordinary level of discipline, honestly, but it also speaks to the function of the music itself.
What do you mean by function?
Well, for someone in his position, the singing wasn't just a recreational hobby. It was a psychological necessity.
Oh, wow.
When your body is commodified for physical labor in an industrial setting all day, your voice, your ability to interpret and express a cultural inheritance, becomes the ultimate assertion of your humanity.
That is beautifully put.
This singing was likely how he recalibrated his physical and mental state after the brutality of the workday.
That makes me look at the world around us entirely differently. And I really hope it does the same for you listening.
It definitely shifts your perspective.
Because we often suffer from this bourgeois assumption that high-level artistic mastery requires limitless leisure time.
Right, that you need a patron and a studio in the woods.
Exactly. We assume that if someone is a master of their craft, they must be doing it full-time somewhere. But this just proves that the barista you buy coffee from, or the mechanic fixing your car, or the painter on the side of a building.
They might possess an encyclopedic mental archive of cultural history.
Yes. They might be executing complex artistic traditions right in the margins of their working lives.
And that is the absolute cornerstone of the folk process. This music was forged by people who worked with their hands, weavers, miners, agricultural laborers, industrial painters.
And the source material highlights this so beautifully by refusing to separate his occupation from his artistry.
Yeah, they don't hide his day job at all.
Not a bit. Topic Records introduces him as one of the finest singers of song from North Ulster while fully acknowledging his blue-collar reality right in the same breath.
Because they understand that his authority as a singer comes from his lived experience, not in spite of it.
Which brings up this super fascinating contradiction in our source material.
The liner notes.
Yes, the liner notes.
Yeah.
Because Topic Records clearly respects him immensely. They understand the profound weight of his cultural contribution, so they write these extensive notes to introduce him.
Right.
But when they actually try to describe his voice the physical sound of his singing, the text just fundamentally breaks down.
The marketing copy completely fails. It is one of the most revealing moments in the archival text.
It's astonishing. You read these notes, and the writers are just grasping for adjectives.
They really are trying everything.
They describe his voice as distinctive. They say he has personal style. They call it lyrical and beautiful.
Very generic terms, honestly.
Super generic. And then, in a move that you would never see in a modern press release, they basically throw their hands in the air and admit defeat.
They just give up.
They literally state that none of these words are enough. They end the description by saying, and I quote, "One thing is certain, if you ever hear him singing, you will remember it."
They totally capitulate to the limitations of the written word.
But why? That's what I keep bumping against. Record labels employ professional writers whose sole job is to translate audio into compelling text.
Right, that's the whole point of a liner note.
We see it all the time with commercial music. We get these thick paragraphs of dense jargon about transcendent, multi-octave sonic timbres or driving syncopated rhythm.
Oh yeah, the typical music journalism speak.
Exactly. So why did the writers at Topic Records, who are deeply educated in traditional music, just give up on describing the mechanics of his sound?
Because the mechanics of North Ulster singing fundamentally resist the vocabulary of Western commercial music critique.
Really? How so?
Well, if you try to analyze his voice using the standard metrics of pitch, tempo, and standard time signatures, you are basically using a ruler to measure a liquid.
Oh, I love that analogy. Let's break that down a bit, because I think a lot of people just assume singing is just singing.
Right, that it's universal.
Yeah, that you just hit the note on pitch and you stay on the beat.
Which is a very classical, conservatory-driven way of understanding music. But traditional unaccompanied singing, particularly from the northern half of Ireland, operates on a totally different mechanical paradigm.
Okay, give us an example. Let's start with pitch.
So, a classical critique might look for perfect adherence to the equal temperament scale, the exact notes you find on a piano keyboard.
Right.
But this tradition utilizes microtonal shading.
And just to clarify the mechanism there for anyone wondering, we aren't talking about singing out of tune, are we?
No, not at all.
We're talking about an entirely different intonation system.
Precisely. In this tradition, a singer might slightly flatten a third or sharpen a seventh landing in the spaces between the keys on a piano.
The spaces between the keys, that's fascinating.
And it's not by accident. It's used as a deliberate emotional mechanism. These microtones create a specific tension that resolves in a way standard tuning simply cannot achieve.
Wow.
So if a writer just calls it lyrical, they're erasing that incredible intentional dissonance.
And the same goes for the rhythm, right? Because the liner notes mentioned his personal style. In standard music, you follow the metronome. The band plays in 4/4 time, and you sing within those 4 beats.
Right.
But he is singing a cappella.
Which grants him total rhythmic elasticity.
Elasticity.
Yeah, in oral traditions, the rhythm is dictated by the narrative flow of the lyrics, not by a mathematical time signature. This is known in classical terms as rubato, but in the Irish tradition, it's tied deeply to the speech patterns of the local dialect.
So it sounds more like talking.
Exactly. A singer like him will stretch a single syllable across multiple beats to emphasize a moment of grief or tension in the story, and then compress the next line into a rapid, conversational cadence.
He is literally molding time around the story.
He is physically shaping time.
So when the label uses a word like distinctive, they are drastically understating the mechanical complexity of what he's actually doing.
Grossly understating it.
He is employing glottal stops, complex grace notes, and melodic variations that change with every single verse. You just can't write that in a press release.
You really can't.
You can't capture the anatomical reality of how he shapes the vowels to create a more resonant sound without accompaniment.
And that brings us to the psychological conclusion the liner notes draw, right? When they say, you will remember it.
Yes, that part is so striking.
By abandoning the technical description, the writers tap into the acoustic properties of authenticity.
That concept of acoustic authenticity is so vital here. It makes me think of Roland Barthes' concept of the grain of the voice.
Oh, absolutely.
We aren't just reacting to the melody. We are reacting to the physical reality of the human body producing that sound.
The physical body in that exact moment in time.
Right. When you hear him sing, you are hearing the anatomy of a man who breathes in industrial fumes all day. You are hearing the vocal cords of someone who has migrated across the sea, who understands manual labor, who knows the specific damp chill of a Glasgow winter.
The grain of his voice carries his entire biography.
And that is exactly why it bypasses the analytical part of a listener's brain and just lodges itself directly into long-term memory.
You cannot transcribe lived experience onto standard sheet music.
You just can't.
The written word fails because the music is an embodied experience. It was meant to be exchanged in the physical space of a room where the listener can actually feel the vibration of the singer's chest.
That's a fantastic realization.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't market the sound of his voice, they had to trust that the content of his songs would speak for itself.
They had to let the songs do the work.
And that forces us to look really closely at the actual material he chose to preserve. Because if his voice is the vehicle, we need to examine the map he was unrolling for his listeners.
And the track list for Free and Easy is quite literally a map.
It is a stunning piece of cartography. When you examine the 12 tracks on this album, you immediately realize this is not, it's not a random assortment of catchy melodies thrown together for commercial appeal.
Not all.
Just reading the titles out loud takes you on this highly specific geographical and socio-political tour of North Ulster.
Let's hear some of them.
Okay, let's look at the actual names on this track list. We've got the Lurgy Streams, the McGarrifelt Mayfair,
Classic.
the Morlaw Shore, the Boys of Mullabon, going to Mass last Sunday, and Sion O'Dubivir, or Sean O'Dwyer.
If we deconstruct this track list, we can see the functional architecture of the folk tradition right there.
What do you mean by functional architecture?
Well, these songs are operating as a comprehensive archive for a community that historically did not have access to formal institutional record keeping.
Let's start with the geographical anchoring then, because the emphasis on specific topography is just overwhelming here.
It really stands out.
Yeah, the Lurgy Streams, the Morlaw Shore, the McGarrifelt Mayfair. Why is there such a granular focus on hyper-local geography in these songs?
Because it's an ingenious mnemonic system.
A memory aid.
Exactly. In an oral culture, memory is incredibly fragile. If you want to ensure that a story, whether it's a tragedy or a labor dispute or a romantic encounter, survives for generations, you cannot just tie it to a date or a person's name.
Why not?
Because dates are easily forgotten and names fade as generations pass. But the landscape is permanent.
Oh, wow. So you encode the narrative into the physical environment itself.
Exactly. You tie the narrative to the moralist shore. By doing that, you guarantee that every single time a member of the community walks past that specific body of water, the landscape itself triggers the memory of the song.
That is brilliant.
The geography essentially acts as a physical hard drive for the culture's history.
So when he sings the Lurgy Streams, he isn't just singing a pretty pastoral melody about some water,
No, he is reciting topographical coordinates.
which takes on an entirely new, almost heartbreaking dimension when you remember where he is singing them.
Yes, the context of Glasgow.
Right. He is standing in Glasgow, surrounded by shipyards, cranes, and post-war tenements. The physical landscape around him is entirely concrete and steel.
It's gray and industrial.
But internally, orally, he is projecting this highly detailed holographic map of the rural streams and shores of North Ulster right into the Scottish air.
And that completely shifts the function of the music from pure local journalism back home to an act of profound cultural preservation and diaspora identity.
It's a lifeline.
Exactly. For an immigrant community, retaining the geography of the homeland through song is a survival mechanism. It prevents cultural erasure when you've been displaced.
And it isn't just the landscape he's preserving, right? It's the specific human histories embedded in that landscape.
The people who live there.
Look at a track like The Boys of Mullabon. This isn't just a nostalgic tune about some local lads having a good time.
Oh, absolutely not. The Boys of Mullabon is a heavy, politically charged piece of oral history.
Yeah, tell us about the background of that one.
It deals directly with the penal system and the practice of penal transportation in the late 18th and 19th centuries, where Irish men were basically exiled to penal colonies like Van Diemen's Land.
So it's journalism from below.
Very much so.
Because the official state records of those transportations would be written by the magistrates, the judges, the people in power. The official record would just list those men as criminals, as statistics.
A line in a ledger.
But the folk song flips the narrative. It records the perspective of the community left behind, centering the grief, the injustice, and the human cost of those legal decrees.
And think about singing that particular song in Glasgow in 1969. That carries incredible resonance.
How so?
Well, you have a massive workforce of Irish immigrants who left their homes due to economic pressures or systemic disenfranchisement. And they are sitting there singing about historical exiles. The context of the performance environment deeply amplifies the meaning of the lyric.
So he is using a song about 18th century exile to speak directly to the realities of a 20th century migrant workforce.
That layered meaning is what makes this tradition so powerful.
That is incredible. And then you have a track like Shanno de Witty here or Shanno Dwyer.
Which goes even further back.
Right, often associated with the aftermath of the 17th century conflicts and the dispossession of land. Again, it's the community ensuring that their specific local heroes and historical traumas are not overwritten by the victors.
The song literally is the monument.
But the archive isn't solely focused on trauma or high-stakes politics, is it?
No, a healthy oral tradition must also document the ordinary, everyday social fabric.
And we see that represented in the track list as well, with songs like Going to Mass Last Sunday and Nancy Bell.
The slice of life tracks.
I find these fascinating because they offer such a rich sociological blueprint of the time. Like when we see a title like Going to Mass Last Sunday, a modern listener might just assume it's a song purely about religious devotion.
Right, just going to church.
But in the context of rural Ireland, Sunday Mass was the epicenter of secular social life as well.
It was the primary mechanism for community cohesion. It was where you exchanged news, where business was discussed, and crucially, it was the socially sanctioned environment for courtship.
The church steps were where all the action was.
Exactly. These songs often encode the highly complex, unspoken rules of social interaction, romance, and class dynamics within the village structure.
So if we look at this 12-track album, Free and Easy, as a whole, it's doing the heavy lifting of an entire cultural institution.
It really is doing it all.
It is a map, a history textbook, a local newspaper, and a sociological study, all compressed into melodic structures that a man can carry in his head while painting a bridge in Glasgow.
Which brings us to the entity that actually recognized the value of this human archive and put it on vinyl.
Right, topic records.
Yes, because he wasn't operating in a vacuum and his recording wasn't an isolated accident. He was embedded in a highly active cultural ecosystem, and his preservation was championed by this very specific institution.
This is such a crucial part of the puzzle. The archival webpage we are examining today, it doesn't just list his album and leave it at that.
No, it builds a whole context.
It curates a highly intentional web of connections. Under this release, the label links free and easy to several other specific albums in their catalog.
What are the links?
We see The Streets of Glasgow, Ireland Her Own by Paddy Tunney and Arthur Kearney, Bonnie Lass Come O'er the Burn by Ray and Archie Fisher, and a collection simply titled Sea Songs and Shanties.
Now, these are not, algorithmic recommendations based on what sounds musically similar.
Like a Spotify you might also like list.
Exactly, not that at all. These are ideological and historical connections purposely mapped out by the label.
Let's investigate that ideology, because Topic Records has a fascinating history mentioned right there on the source. They note the label is celebrating 85 years.
Which is an incredible run for an independent label.
It really is. That means they were founded in the late 1930s. This label wasn't built to compete with pop radio,
No, not at all.
It was built with a specific mandate to treat the art of the working class with profound seriousness.
Topic Records is arguably the most important institution in the British and Irish folk revival. They approached commercial recording not just as a profit-making enterprise, but as an ethnographic duty.
Wow.
When you look at the web of albums they connect to him, you see them mapping his entire cultural and physical environment.
Let's break those specific connections down, because they are so telling. First, they link him to Ireland Her Own by Paddy Tunney and Arthur Kearney.
That album represents his roots.
Okay, tell us about Tunney.
Tunney is one of the most revered figures in Irish traditional singing. By placing Mitchell next to Tunney, the label is validating his authority. They're saying, look, this industrial painter belongs in the pantheon of master traditional singers.
It's an instant stamp of approval.
Exactly.
And then they immediately pivot and link him to The Streets of Glasgow.
Which represents his present reality.
Right.
They are acknowledging that the folk tradition isn't just a static museum piece belonging to, rural pastures and green hills. It lives and breathes in the concrete urban centers.
So he is the living bridge between the deep rural roots of Ireland Her Own and the modern urban grit of The Streets of Glasgow.
He physically embodies the transition between those two albums.
And what I find most compelling about this specific era of the Glasgow scene is the presence of Ray and Archie Fisher in these curated links.
Oh, yes. The Fishers.
The Fishers are absolute royalty in the Scottish folk revival. So why is the label linking a Derry-born singer of North Ulster songs to a pivotal Scottish folk album like Bonnie Lass Come O'er the Burn?
Because it reveals the true nature of the Glasgow folk scene in the late 60s and early 70s.
It wasn't divided.
No, it wasn't segregated at all. The Irish migrants and the Scottish locals weren't singing in isolated silos. It was a massive cross-pollinating environment.
I just picture them sharing the same physical spaces. You'd have Scottish revivalists and traditional Irish singers sitting in the same pub back rooms, the same cramped folk clubs.
Trading songs over pints.
Yeah, analyzing vocal techniques and deeply influencing each other. He, with his highly ornamented North Ulster repertoire, would have been this fascinating and deeply respected figure in a room full of Scottish singers like the Fishers.
It was an intellectual and artistic melting pot for the working class.
It really was.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final, I think, brilliant connection the label makes, the link to Sea Songs and Shanties.
At first glance, that one seems like the odd one out, right?
Totally. I mean, he isn't a sailor, he's a painter.
But look at the underlying mechanics of it. What is a sea shanty?
It's functional music.
Exactly. It is an art form generated by physical labor, designed to regulate breath and muscle movement during grueling physical tasks on a ship.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
By linking him to shanties, Topic Records is making a profound statement about the nature of his art. They are drawing a direct line between the labor of the sailor and the labor of the industrial migrant.
They are validating the music of the worker.
It's an ecosystem of dignity. They are arguing that the cultural output of the people who build the cities and sail the ships is just as vital, just as complex, and just as worthy of archival preservation as anything created in a fancy conservatory.
That is just, it's a beautiful way to look at it. And you see that commitment to preservation in the physical reality of the source material itself.
You mean the website?
Yeah, the web page explicitly offers a download PDF booklet for the original liner notes.
Which feels like a radical act in our current digital landscape, doesn't it?
It really does. We live in an era of frictionless streaming, where music is so often stripped of its context, just reduced to background noise on a random playlist.
It just plays while you do the dishes.
Right. So the fact that Topic Records digitized a piece of cardboard from the 1970s, ensuring that the essays, the historical context, and the biographical reality of this industrial painter remain permanently attached to the audio files, it shows how much they understand the vulnerability of history.
Without those liner notes, without the careful curation of these record labels, voices like his simply vanish into the air the moment the song ends.
They just evaporate.
The mainstream historical narrative is incredibly efficient at paving over the working class experience. So, archiving this material, maintaining the PDF booklets, celebrating 85 years of this specific focus, it is an ongoing battle against cultural amnesia.
It really makes you realize the power of active curation.
Absolutely.
Because today, we might not be pressing vinyl records, but we all engage in this on some level. Whether you are running a highly specific independent podcast, or curating a niche digital archive, or honestly, even just interviewing your grandparents on your phone.
You are participating in this exact same impulse.
Yes. You are trying to pin down these complex, ephemeral human stories before they are lost to time. We are all trying to act as our own local Topic records.
Because we understand intuitively that if we don't document the nuances, the microtones of our own cultures, the specific geography of our own lives, the broader historical record will not do it for us.
That is a staggering thought to pull from a single album released decades ago. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, and it all started with just a simple name on an archival webpage.
It really opens up an entire world.
It does. By looking closely, we discovered Kevin Mitchell, not just as a flat data point, but as a complex three-dimensional artist. We found an industrial painter who carried the heavy physical toll of his labor, yet possessed a voice so mechanically intricate and authentically rich that it completely defied the descriptive limits of professional writers.
We unpacked how he utilized that voice not merely to entertain, but to act as a living cartographer. He projected the rural landscapes, the historical traumas, and the social fabric of North Ulster directly into the industrial heart of 1969 Glasgow.
And we saw how he functioned as a vital node in a much larger ecosystem. He was a bridge between the Irish roots and the Scottish revival, championed by a record label that recognized the profound, undeniable genius inherent in working-class culture.
It is a story that completely upends how we should view the people we pass by every single day.
It demands that we look closer at the ordinary.
It absolutely does.
And as we close out this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, sitting at the table with us with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this time deconstructing how he used a 12-track album to map his geography, his history, and his community.
So we ask you to turn that lens on yourself. If a cultural archivist were to examine your life right now, the migrations you've made, the specific jobs you've endured, the local characters you've known, and the microcultures you belong to, and they had to compile a 12-track album that accurately mapped your internal landscape, what would your track list look like?
What are the specific streams, the local fairs, and the everyday moments that you are quietly preserving? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the flat data, keep looking for the complex mechanics behind the things you love, and always seek out the extraordinary archives hidden in the everyday people around you. Until next time.